Hi, everyone. I'm Sweet Melba. Thanks for joining me out on the porch. It's nice today. Well, I think all of us at some point have probably thought, how will I be remembered? And not so much about, being over dramatic about it, but just kind of it's something you quietly comes across your mind. And I think as we get older, I know I think about that a little bit more. And so what's my legacy? What will my legacy be? And I've just really been thinking a little bit more about that, I think, as I've been doing my different videos and whatnot. And I think what I thought was legacy or, how I thought I wanted to be remembered has really changed over the years as I've gotten older. And what I thought when I was younger really isn't how I think about it now. So thanks for joining me. I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So, as I say, I'm out on the porch today, which is really nice. So, you may hear some birds in the background, but I like that when I'm on the porch. Well, so when I was younger, what did I think legacy meant, or what did I want to be remembered for? And then it was, and I'm thinking about, when I was in my 20s or something, I really thought it all had to do with money. How much of an estate would I leave? What would I be leaving to others? And also, what were going to be my key accomplishments in my life? And in particular, this is kind of a funny little story, but when I was in college, I had taken a public speaking class, and you had to do different types of speeches, um, debate type speeches or logical speeches, persuasive. Anyway, so one of them was just kind of a fun one, right? Was how did we think we would be remembered after we passed away? What would we be known for? And for me, I was a history major. I love history. That's what I do now, connected to the nonprofits, but uh, it's always been important to me. So even then, in college, working on my degree, it was really important to me then. But I said in my speech that I was going to be known for solving the JFK assassination. Exactly who did it? So I must have been watching a lot of JFK assassination type documentaries and stuff at the time. But anyways, that's what I wanted to be, thought I'd be remembered for. So just kind of funny, and I've kind of never forgot that, but I've moved way beyond that. But anyways, like I say, it really was all about, again, would I have a large estate? Would I, leave something to family? And again, what would I be known for? But, as I got older, that really changed. And I think it changed a lot because of people in my life and what I was seeing from how they lived their life. And when they passed away, what really stayed with me. So my outlook on how I thought I would be remembered changed. So I think as we get older and as influential people in our lives, pass away, we reflect on their life and our interaction with them. And I think that what changed my outlook. And you may feel the same. There may have important people in your life who've passed away. And then, what do we remember about them? For me, it isn't their money. It wasn't how big of an estate they left or what their accomplishments were. It was how they lived their life and how they interacted with others and with me. Those are the things that I remember. And when I think of particular individuals, those are the things I remember. So you probably have, again, similar people in your life that you think, what was the legacy they left? Or what do you remember most about them when you think of them? And again, it's not those big flashy things. It's more, I think, certainly for me, again, about how they lived their life. So for me, there are probably three people that I think really had an important uh, role in my life, and that I think of when I think about legacy and how I remember them. So, my brother passed away um, 2 years ago now in December. And I've talked about this in some of my other videos. His life was just very inspirational to me and so many other people. But when I look back on what I remember most about his life, the way he lived his life, was despite the health challenges that he had all his life, he always strived to do the things he really enjoyed and to be around the people he really loved, and loved spending time with. And he always went out of his way to let those people know how much they meant to him. And in particular, one of the things I really remember is the holidays at Christmas time. And he always wanted to make sure that the people, the friends and whatnot in the community, neighbors, that they knew that he was thinking of them. And given his challenges, he couldn't bake, but he always wanted to deliver baked goods. So my mom had to help with that. And thankfully, she's a great cook. But so she would bake muffins and cakes and things of that nature, cookies and whatnot. And then my brother would always make handwritten cards to them, and then they would kind of plan with my dad going around and deliver these to their different friends and neighbors that were important to him. So he always went out of his way to let other people know just how important they were to him and how much he loved them and care about them. Whether it was just at the holidays or picking up the phone or sending an email, hey, how are you? That's something that has really stuck with me about his life. And it just really, again, has been a reminder to me that, in his case, he didn't have all these other flashy, the estate and the money. He didn't have that. But it was the way he interacted with others and how he felt about them and letting them know that. So it's something that certainly I think is notable to be remembered for. The other person who I think of a lot when I think about legacy and remembering, you know, what I remember most about them is a family friend. And she was a friend of my mom's when I was growing up. So probably about 10, I think, when I first met her. And just a lot of fun. But, she had a lot of challenges in her life from when she was young, growing up, and then into adulthood. And it kind of seemed like there was always a challenge, if not one, more than one. But she always had a joy for life. She always wanted to have fun. And despite all of the things that were going on, and certainly they set her back and whatnot, and, just presented more challenges. But every time I was with her, every time she was over at the house, it was always about the joy in life, despite those challenges, and making a point of talking about those and sharing fun stories and whatnot. And when we were together, special trips that we would do, and she would just, she was certainly more outgoing than my mom was, and certainly more than I am. But it was just so much fun to be with her because you never knew just what she might do to have fun. But one in particular that I have never forgotten and just kind of reiterates this joy for life and how overcoming the challenges that she had. We went to a George Strait concert, and it was in a small venue indoors, and it wasn't something that my parents could afford to go, but she knew how much my mom liked George Strait, and she loved George Strait. I liked him too. And I was probably, I don't know, maybe 17, 16, 17 at this time. Anyways, so had gone out of town and we got hotel rooms, but she bought the tickets and she helped pay for this because she thought this was going to be so much fun. And so we went. We had front row seats. um, which we were really surprised when we got there. And she was, she knew how to dress very classy. She was very attractive. And people just naturally gravitated to her. And again, her enthusiasm for life. But anyway, so we're uh, at this front row. It was kind of the table seating type concert, right? Long tables, and so we're in the front there, right on the stage, and we're enjoying the concert. And again, she's dressed very nicely, and not that we didn't dress up too, but she looked really good. And the next thing we know, my mom and I, she's up on the stage and she is climbing, crawling on the stage to get a guitar pick that he had thrown and didn't quite make it to her. So she just got up and got up there to get it. And we didn't know what was going on, but it was like, oh my gosh. But it was so her. She was out to have fun and appropriately so, but just I never would have done that. My mom certainly would have done that, but it was so much fun and I've never forgotten that. And anyway, the story went on, but uh it was a great concert and whatnot. And my mom and I, we didn't stay up late, so we went back to the room. But her and her husband, and he didn't go to the concert, I don't know what he was doing while we were there, but anyway, her and her husband spent the rest of the night. We were at a casino in Lake Tahoe. Spent the rest of the night on the casino. And the next morning, when we caught up with them, they had a great time. They met up with the band. They played craps and 21 blackjack with the band. So it was quite an adventure. But that was her. Everything she did in going out and having fun, when she was healthy and things of that nature, she made sure she had a good time. And that's something I really remember about her. And I try to remember about how I approach the different things that I do. Now, I never go to that extreme. That's just not my nature. But I remember that. And that's one of the things that I just really remember about her. And that, she always found a way to be at all the special occasions in my life. When I graduated from college, or actually, I'll start back when I graduated from high school. When I graduated from college, she was there. When I got married, she was there. She always was there. And it was just so meaningful to me. And it just, brightened the room. And that's what I remember about her. That was a life well lived, despite all of the challenges. And it really made an impression on me. And again, what I remember today. And the other important person that I really remember, and I've talked about this before, and I'll probably talk about it again, is my grandmother. My grandma in Alabama. So my dad's mom. She surprisingly sometimes had such an influence on me and still does. That's why I'm on the porch, because I loved sitting on the porch with her when I was on visits to Alabama. And what I remember about her and her life was the simple living, very simple country life. But sitting on the porch talking to her, she had struggles too. She lived, again, a very simple life, and not a very um, wealthy life in the sense of money. They didn't have money. It was very simple country living. And I remember many occasions, but in particular, sitting on the porch with her in the swing one summer when I was back there on vacation. And she loved to tell stories, and all of them were about family. And she knew who was related to who and whose cousin married this one and that one, and who this neighbor was. I mean, that's what she loved to do. So a little gossipy in that sense, but it was family history. It was the roots and what was important. And I always loved to listen to her stories. And she would tell you like it is, or she'd give you a little, wink of the eye or whatnot. And you kind of knew there was more behind that story than maybe she was sharing. But, it's one of the things I remember again, was she always reminded me about how important it was to remember where we came from and who came before us and the struggles that they had and what they overcame and achieved. And I'll talk about this in another video coming up soon, but those family roots and those family stories are so important. And those are the things that I remember most about her. And that despite the limitations she had in her life and not getting to go and do a lot of things, and that was, again, because of money or choice and whatnot, just, a different upbringing and a different lifestyle. But when she was telling stories to me, there always was a funny component, right? I remember her telling me when she first met my grandpa, she didn't like him very much. And she didn't, she thought that was kind of funny, but she said, I kind of warmed up to him, I guess, And anyways, they got married and whatnot. And for some reason, I had asked, my dad is the firstborn, how did she pick his name? Because there's no other people in our family with that name. And I said, how did you pick dad's name? And she says, well, she said there was a boy in school when I was in, probably elementary grammar school that I liked that had that name. And so that's why I picked that name. And I don't know if anybody else ever knew that. But it was just a funny moment. We just laughed about it. And again, she loved telling those stories, and they were so important and so influential to me. And the other part of that was our lives were very different. I was raised in Southern California, um, with a lot more opportunities than she had. But whenever we were together, she always made a point of saying how she was proud of what I was doing, and that I was getting to do some of the things that she never got to do. And she encouraged me to continue to do my schooling, because I said I wanted to go to college. And then when I got into college, and it was just much appreciation for recognizing the opportunities we have in our life, the choices that we make and why we make them, and remembering again where we came from and where our families came from, and to appreciate and be grateful for the things that we have that others didn't have. And that's something I really remember a lot about my grandma. And again, that legacy that she left for me, and when I think about her and how she's remembered, those are the things that I remember. So again, not the money, not the accomplishments, nothing like that. It's how she lived her life and what she knew what mattered and what was important to her. So that to me is a legacy. So for you too, you may, as I'm talking about these people that were important in my life, I'm sure there are many in your life as well. And when you think about them, what is it that you remember about them? I would gather it's probably not, again, the estate or the money or the big accomplishments, but it's your interaction with them, how they lived their life, what was important to them. And I think those are lessons for us, as we get older, and a reminder that, how are we living our life? And are we making choices and doing things that are important to us? And so I'd love to hear if you'd like to share in the comments who are some of those important people in your life, and what do you remember most about them? Because I think that's the insight for all of us, that as we, at midlife going forward, that we think about, again, what's most important to us and how we want to be remembered, and what we want to be remembered for. I think that's all important. And we have an active role in that right now. So going forward, we have this next chapter in our life, right? We have the opportunity to design that the way we want. And that's kind of how I'm looking at this going forward for me, going into retirement this year, and, making choices as to what I'm doing and how I'm spending my time. And that, again, I get to make those choices. I get to sit and consider those types of things. And for me, you know, in my career, it was always important, even then, that for me, I always wanted to give back, in some way, whether it was the knowledge I had or the skills or the insights and whatnot, doing the mentoring that I've done. For me, those are the things that are important, that we pass what we know and the lessons learned along to others, and that sharing our stories really is important to so many, whether that's family, friends, or people we've not met. So for me, my YouTube channel is an opportunity to do that. I enjoy sharing the stories and some insights, and I look forward to others sharing their thoughts as well. So to me, when I think about legacy and how I might be remembered, I can't control how other people see me, right? But what I can control is how I live my life and the things that are important to me. So I think it's a time for us to reflect on that and to be a little more intentional in choosing what we do and how we do that. And I try to do that more, and really be aware of the impact that what I do and the stories I share have. And I enjoy doing that. And the individuals that I've mentioned, I think about them often, and just again, how they lived their life and what I remember most about that. So I think for us, you know, who are those people and how can we learn from their example? And then, like I say, going forward, how can we live our life and make choices now that allow others to see an example of what we think a life well lived is, and what we think's important? And those may be the things that people remember about us most. So again, I think we have an active role in designing how we live these next chapters in our life. I think also there is a practical aspect of legacy. And for me and my husband, it was important for us to look at that financial piece. And for us, we wanted to make sure that our family members were taken care of as best as we could, that our wishes were known. And so we did some estate planning, and those were important times for us to consider what we wanted to leave behind in terms of that estate. So, again, it's not that you ignore that part, but I don't think that's what people remember. I know that's not what I remember about other people. But, it was important to us to get that in order. And it gave us such peace of mind, too, that all of that was taken care of. And again, our wishes are known, what we hope to leave to others, so that other people in our family don't have to worry about that. And so when we travel more and go on trips, I don't know that I can really articulate what peace of mind that's given us. We don't have to worry about that. It's been taken care of. And it's just I don't know, an easy way of dealing with that. And so that when we're out doing things, we're not, again, concerned that something hasn't been taken care of. So again, I think there's a practical piece there to legacy. Um, and we've taken care of that from our perspective. So I think that's important too. But I certainly don't think that's what is the legacy or how we're remembered. But there's certainly some benefits to that too, I guess. Well, in closing, I think for me, legacy's always been an important thing. And as I've gotten older and, that perspective has changed. And as people have, impacted my life and passed away, and I think about them, it's just a reminder to me that it's really how we live our lives, how we interact with others, what we share and give to others, the relationships that we have and the opportunities that we may have to help others. to share what we know, to share stories, to share skills, and to really, in an essence, encourage those that we come in contact with, the next generation and whatnot. And so I hope that, my activities that I've done in my life and going forward will do that. And for those of you that, maybe at a similar point, again, I'd be interested to hear kind of who are some of those important people in your life who's kind of set that example for you. And how are you making choices now that will be your legacy and hopefully what people will remember about you? So I think we all have the opportunity to contribute to that, to make meaningful choices, and think about that regularly. And, again, enjoy our lives, try to achieve a life well lived that others will remember and that we feel good about leaving behind. So, thanks for joining me for Sunday on the Porch on this nice day. I guess spring's coming a little soon, I think. But thanks again for joining me. I'll see you next time. All right. Bye bye.